Welcome, everyone, to the first episode of the Vanguard Chronicles podcast, where we have an ongoing conversation into the creative process behind the Vanguard, our crowdsourced D&D campaign. I'm one of the hosts and dungeon masters of the Vanguard, Nathan, also known as Spark Ascendant, and I'll be joined by my co-host and fellow Vanguard DM. Go ahead, partner, introduce yourself.
Yes, I am Sean, also one of the DMs for the Vanguard, and I am known as General Grob.
So I know I'm certainly excited and ready to dig in, and I know you are too. And at this point, we have a very important topic, which is what it is we're going to be doing during this podcast here.
Yes, I'm excited as well. This is so much fun. We've been building up for this for quite some time, but yeah, it's kind of the origins and how we developed this crowdsourced campaign that we call the Vanguard. I think it's something that's quite interesting and fun, and as we developed it.
Yeah. So just for the sake of introductions, a bit of information about this project, this campaign we keep talking about here. So Sean and I are two DMs of a campaign of a D&D campaign that meets monthly. Every month running brand new adventures, each written by, or each DM within that campaign writing a brand new adventure for that session of the game. Never able to anticipate exactly what players they'll have in their session, with a time limit because we meet at a local bar and thus have the place has to close at some point, right? And at the same time, we're also trying to tell all of these stories, all interconnected into one greater campaign. So it's not just a series of one shots, it's a series of adventures all tied together in this one bigger, longer story. And at this point, I think we have over 50 different distinct player characters that have been created at this point. And I know we're running like 36 players per game. And the coolest part too, we don't charge for any of this. This is just something we've been doing as this like super fun passion project and side hobby.
Oh yeah, it was. It isn't. It first became an experiment into multi-table gameplay, which is something we'll get into. The idea that one table affects another table in real time. I think that's a ambitious endeavor, but I think as we focused on it, we solved that problem a bit, had some fun with it. Uh, but yeah, it's an ongoing process as we do experiment with different ways of playing this game. But it is something that I think we're getting quite proud of. We've done this for a while, so.
It definitely is. We're coming up on our 1 year anniversary. Actually, we're coming up on that as we record, but we're planning to drop this around the time of our 1 year anniversary for our session and for our players. So for this first episode, we just want to give everyone a big intro into who we are, how we got this process started, and sort of go from there and tell people what they can expect. And I can, speaking for myself, certainly, Sean, I know that this process and all of the challenges of DMing this game and this style of game, as well as just DMing so many different adventures for so many different players, has been such a unique experience from my standpoint as someone who loves DMing. And I know that that's part of why I've wanted to share this. And I'm sure you feel the same way too.
Oh, absolutely. I don't have as much experience in DMing as you do, but this is, for lack of a better term, it's DM on hard. There's a significant amount of challenges in prepping for games like this because of the flexibility we need to kind of incorporate, but also uh, within the time limits that we have, being at a tavern that's been so gracious enough to allow us to play there, a place called Sonora Tavern. It's in our home state here in Newark, Delaware.
So with that in mind, actually, I think that's a great place to start too, talking about, I mean, this is going to be a little cliche, but this is going to be a story about how a bunch of us literally all met in a tavern.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if we're going to talk about origins, Sean, please, absolutely. It started with you. So why don't you give everyone the intro to the story of the Vanguard?
Yeah, I'm gonna shed some light on this. And yes, that is what makes this so uniquely funny to us, and what we really get some joy out of is the fact that this started as a bunch of people meeting in a tavern, as most D&D games do. I was sitting at Sonora Tavern and speaking with the owner, and we're friends, and she asked me how they could maybe populate or make a Tuesday night a little bit more interesting, or a Wednesday night, more filled up. She had music sometimes, and I said, well, you could do. And as a suggestion, I just looked at her. I said, well, you could do a game of Dungeons and Dragons. And before she could even answer what was that, now is one of our other DMs, Brian, comes up out of nowhere, right over my shoulder, and we had this is the first we had met, and he had just went, "Oh, I heard somebody say D&D," and I was like, yeah, hi." I had just kind of verbalized the concept without any idea what that might mean, and Brian and I immediately hit it off as friends and started to communicate and talk about what this could be.
It's funny you say that because that's a detail that I always, always, always forget. And I've known it now for a while, but for the longest time I did it and then learned it, and then I keep forgetting is when I first I met you guys, I thought you guys had already known each other because I knew you guys both frequented the bar and
Mhm.
had
Yeah.
clearly been on the scene and started planning this before I came along. But I forget that that was actually legitimately the first friendship bond connection formed by the Vanguard.
Yes, which is kind of where I thought because of that uniqueness, because it just kind of happened that Brian and I became we are friends and became instant friends, is that it made me realize that there's a community that we could build around this. That maybe I'm not the only person with this kind of enthusiasm, and I'm not the only person that would want to try and play this type of game. And let's see if I can find more people. And that's where it kind of extended to you. I started to put it out on Facebook, looking for DMs and looking for people to help me do this. And that's kind of where you reached out, or you reached out to the bar. I believe that's how that worked, right?
Yeah, so more specifically, so my girlfriend had gone on a vacation and she went off with a friend to like the coldest and wettest weekend or week Arizona had ever had.
Right.
That's her story, this is mine. But so she went off to that and I was like, "Well, cool. Bachelor time. Like what am I going to do with my time?"
Right.
And I saw a post in our local Dungeons and Dragons Facebook group that this place Sonora was looking for DMs, free beer, free appetizers to anyone who participated, and honestly, that was kind of a draw enough for me.
Yeah. Free food, free app. That was her suggestion. That was actually Sonora's suggestion to try to attract more TMs. I was like, I like it. I like it a lot.
Well, I mean, it worked. So I messaged her immediately and said, "Hey, I'm a DM. I'm interested," and shot her a bunch of questions too, like a lot of logistical questions I had out of the gate. And one of the first things I wanted to know was, you looking for a one shot? You looking for a campaign? And she said the word campaign, to which I immediately said, absolutely not. No, no way, not at
Right.
all.
Pump the brakes.
Yeah, well, because I was already running a weekly game, and then I had just started a monthly game, which a year later, that monthly game has only met twice. So timing gets in the way of every campaign in the world.
Absolutely.
But I definitely didn't want to commit to that. And she said, we're just trying to get this off the ground. So can you just come for one game? And message this
Right.
guy Sean too, because she's like, I don't know much about this. And I was like, sure, okay, I can do that.
Right.
So then I emailed you
Mhm.
and sent you all of my questions. And I think pretty confidently, I think the response I basically got from you was something along the lines of, these are all great questions. I don't know.
That's true. They were all great questions. They were all legitimately really great ways of. I didn't even know what questions to ask. To be honest with you, when we first started this, I was just happy that someone reached out and said, I'm excited to do this," and I was like, "Okay, let's just start there and continue." And you had a game, you were ready to go. I wrote mine, and we were ready to kind of put it together. And we met again with a couple other people that had said they were going to DM Rich and Brian to start to formulate what our first session might look like.
Well, that first meeting too is, I mean, from my perspective, I came to Sonora, which is a this is not throwing shade on it at all, but it definitely has the tavern vibe. And I
Absolutely.
came in the middle of the day too, so noonday sun, very bright light. You come into now the dimly, warmly lit interior, your eyes adjust to the light. A stranger over at the bar with long grognard definitely listens to heavy metal, definitely has been a nerd for a long time, hair, like, raise the glass to you as you walk in, like, it's the full you walk into tavern vibes, and I'm like,
Right.
"Oh, okay, well, this is gonna be interesting." And I remember we started talking about some of the ideas too, and you had pitched it really came down to this idea of multi-table gameplay, of
Right.
wanting to have a big interconnected campaign where all these players are playing simultaneously, and maybe something happens at your table that then affects my table. And I thought you were nuts. I thought it was an insane idea because, again, no shade, but DMs really do love to get ambitious.
Yeah, it was an ambitious thought, and I'm also a proponent of throwing out ambitious ideas with, to a certain degree, to hopefully maybe somebody can come up with an idea or a solution just by randomly talking about it. And I know I threw it out there. Kind of got the vibe when we first met that not only you were an experienced DM, but you had a lot more knowledge of just the kind of mechanics of the game than I did. So I was like, well, let me just throw this out there and see what we get.
Well, it wasn't the first time I tried to get involved with like a local community D&D thing. I love running. The joke we frequently make is, it's honestly not a joke, is I like complaining that I never get to play and I always have to DM more than I
That's a
actually like playing.
Yeah, that's 100% accurate, people.
It's
That
also
is.
my favorite joke to tell way too much, but yeah, I love complaining that I don't get to play, but I actually I like playing. Playing's fun, but so I'd already investigated and wanted to play at like the local library a couple times, but a lot of times I find, first off, nerds get really ambitious with a lot of big ideas. We've all wanted to run a 1 through 20 campaign, but then
Yes.
on top of that, I mean, connecting multiple tables. Basically, I started to go down the rabbit hole that listeners will hear me say on later episodes of this podcast, where you said something that I just thought sounded crazy, and I said, well, how would that work? To do that, you would have to, and then like I got notes out. I'm like, well, if you did that, it would. Well, I guess if this might work. Like once I open a Google, Gmail to start typing up, and I've got bullet points. I'm like, dang it, Sean's got me.
Yeah. It was just, and I kind of did know that when I saw you, when I started seeing the emails, we were going back and forth communicating on how we were going to build this, or how we thought we could build this. I think it's a better way to say it. The term started early on is that, the players are going to run simple adventures. They're going to run one shots while the DMs are going to be playing a larger campaign. And it was like, well, how's that possible? Well, we're going to kind of guide our larger narrative, but let our players flesh out the 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 mechanics of how it actually would happen. Let them give them the agency to run with the story and the environment that we built.
Yeah, and actually, I think it's a really good way, talking point to segue us into. We're kind of talking about what we are on this episode here and what we're going to be moving forward. But I think it's important to make a couple distinctions to what we are not. And I hem and haw about saying what we are not because when you're talking about game genres and styles, it's all very subjective. When you're talking about anything with a tabletop RPG, it's very subjective and
There's-
wishy-washy.
right.
I think it's anyone who's listening is familiar with the concept of a West Marches style of campaign might be noticing a couple similarities with that. I wouldn't say we characterize ourselves as a West Marches campaign per se, but there is very admittedly some overlap in some of the core ideas, but we didn't start with that template. We started with our own and tried to build toward that. So for anyone who doesn't know what a West Marches campaign is, very basically on a definition, which by the way, if you Google, you'll find multiple kinds. So my own Nathan's summary definition. A West Marches style campaign gets around the idea of regularly meeting every week with the same players, and the DM is always developing stories and sessions to meet the needs of those players, doing their best to anticipate, but not entirely sure of how players are going to go. A West Marches instead will have the players effectively prescribe, we want to do this kind of session. Maybe they have a quest board they set up on like a Discord or a message board on a Facebook. This is the adventure we would like to run. This is when we would like to do it. So the player schedule, which, oh, what a dream come true.
Yeah,
And
let
then
them do
and
it.
yeah, and then the DMs will write to fit that. So it's designed to help DMs avoid burnout and also make games a little bit more available for players. We again have some overlap, but we definitely differentiate in a couple ways from there.
Yeah, definitely. The extended idea of our storylines and yes, it's not so much player driven stories as it's players' involvement in the environment that we've laid out for them. And the interconnectivity of that, what can happen in one story definitely plays into another story's plot lines and threads that we extend as DMs. And when we're writing these, they're unique, not just to the characters, because it's hard for us to, in a West March, you have the same group picking this storyline. Here we have, I don't know what my player complement may be this time. We promote, we tease, but we don't really know who we're going to get.
Right. Yeah. Instead of the players saying they want to run an adventure and then we write it to that, it's this weird kind of hybrid style, I think, between a more
Yeah,
traditional campaign and uh, even if you look at what is it, Adventures League it's kind of another style of like a West Marches type game.
right.
But in that case, the adventures, right, they come from Wizards of the Coast. So it's not as player driven, but there's still that player progression and interconnectivity. And again, we hopefully by this point everyone can understand how it's hard to define, and I don't want us to sound like we're saying, well, we're not a West Marches campaign, right?
Right.
It's just kind of our own style and our own approach to it. But with this, what I think what we find the strengths of it being, we have from a larger traditional campaign style, everyone is very invested in this one story as we tell the story of the Vanguard, which we'll get to in just a minute. But at the same time,
Yeah, it,
it's yeah, go ahead, please take it, save me.
it was more very loose at the beginning. We didn't really know what we would get, the turnout, how we were going to do it. I've said this before, and I'll say it. It is kind of amazing that it has gotten to the point it has, because it was very loose. I was spitballing in every direction, to see what worked and what we thought would work and what the players reacted to, and then we noticed that they got more into connecting with our story, and what made it important is that we were the good guys. The Vanguard was the protectors of the realm, and have been within the lore that we've created from the beginning. And everyone gravitated to the Vanguard because it's something you want to be a part of as a hero of Faerun.
Yeah, and I think that's another important point to maybe for us to dig into, also draw some of the distinction as to what we're doing here. Because when you look at that style of campaign, not to say, by the way, that a a traditional West Marches style of campaign can't have that connection to the lore and the story.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't at all want to talk down on any. I am sure there are wonderful, amazing stories we may even get in the comments. But I know that with ours in particular, we even started as to write some of the lore and build up some of the stories and some of the ideas we wanted to pitch and present in our adventures in such a manner that players are able to much more easily latch onto and get engaged with those tales and those stories. In fact, I know that was part of our initial design planning was, right, this is not a campaign where you're going to come with your prince main character who is exiled from his home world, and somewhere we're going to write the quest where you go back and take back your fallen mer kingdom from your brother the sea master.
Right.
Any Aquaman fans? Instead, right, we kind of railroad a bit in how we write these sessions, but also our community is set up and with an expectation such that you're coming to play these adventures and in this particular style, and the payoff will be these interwoven, interconnected stories where they'll get clues at my table one month, and then those clues will help them solve a puzzle at your table in the next month.
Exactly. That was the beginning or the essence of multi-table gameplay. It was like multi-story gameplay. Let's see how we can move arcs and threads from one table to the next, tie them together so that they build players' expectations. Is I will come back and play this player again and enjoy the progression of Dungeons and Dragons. And a lot of these type of games, there is no progression. You're just you play, you leave, everything's good, and it's fun. And there's no in any way there's no bad way to play D&D. Right? There isn't. So
Right.
everyone's style is theirs, and what works for one group may not work for another. What makes our challenge unique to us, I think, is the fact that we have 36 players, and those 36 players can be migrated across 6 different tables at present, and you do not know what you're going to get. So your complement of players, you may get all fighters, you may get a druid, or you
Oh
may
my
get
god, yeah.
in most cases a party without a cleric,
Yeah, that's
which
common.
is
Yep.
where Brian came in and he uses his persona of Holmgren Glomengarden. Our DM Brian used that character as a vehicle to help new players that are new to the game that don't really know that they should probably not run headfirst into every battle.
And you talk about the diversity of the player base in terms of their expectations coming to this game. What makes it, I think, really, really cool, or at least one of my favorite parts, as technically not a player in the game,
Right.
is you have a game where if you want the bar style game where you come by once every couple of months, sit in through a single session one shot adventure, and then you leave because you got your D&D fix. We offer that, right? As a, you can totally come play for free. Obviously, hey, buy some food, get some drinks, support the venue. But you can come, get that, get your D&D session on, and tune out. If you don't come back, cool. We loved playing with you. Awesome. But to the players who stay and stay invested and stay engaged, I mean, again, the reaction from our community and from uh, honestly, I feel friends at this point of all the people who have played in this game
Right.
and shown how much they care about it. They have a very different level of investment, and they're also getting excited about this in the same level here.
Yeah, and part of the two, in our attempt to build our community and expand this communities, we encouraged what we have now coined as guild dispatches. They were originally just ways to continue the role playing concept between sessions through our Facebook group, and a lot of them were just General Grom, which, as an NPC, was my NPC voice to the players to give them some more clues of what might be happening and to try to build the concept of please interact between adventures. And now, I mean, we didn't start there, obviously, but through being consistent and showing that concept from all of our points of view, is increased more and more. And like the guild dispatches to me are invaluable as a DM to know that they are picking up what you're putting down and they're following your plot lines better than you think. And it also allows you to get better as a DM to the plot lines you want them to grab that they're not. How do you make sure they do that without repeating yourself?
Yeah, as you like to commonly bring up, they certainly hooked me. The dispatches 100% did.
uh, yeah, my first one, it absolutely. When I read my first player dispatch to me from the player's point of view, from the character's point of view, there is I it it blew my mind from that moment. I was thought that was one really amazing. It's just such a fun way to see what your characters, how they're reacting to your story.
Yeah, and speaking of story, actually, that God, you're just serving them up today. But I think it's a great transition to talk just a little bit now that we've discussed, what we are, how we're similar and different. This kind of hybridish style, again, crowdsourced campaign project experiment thing we've got going on here. Why don't we talk a little bit about the story? We're not going to go too deep. It's only the first episode, but you've told me IRL, Sean, what is the Vanguard? But now, as I walk into the guild hall and I look around a little bit and I begin talking, I've been hearing whispers and rumors of this guild across the land, across. I don't want to spoil too much of where you're getting to. Tell me about the Vanguard.
Okay, yeah, the Vanguard conceptually, the Vanguard is a group of adventurers that have gathered at a guild hall that's been established for centuries. It has been the uh, home base for heroes within the Forgotten Realms campaign setting. It's where we started, but we have so many other like elements that are our own homebrew cities and homebrew towns and homebrew people and NPCs. But it is truly a group of adventurers who want to protect Faerun from evil. And it started with there's a rumor about rumors have resurfaced about a ancient weapon called Neuraxis, the Mage Killer.
The Mage Killer.
A weapon of immense destructive power that was, as we've developed a lore, and I don't want to get too deep into it because we do talk about this in other episodes.
Right.
We will talk about this in other episodes. Is that it is an essence of the god of chaos in our world, and he's corrupted a lot of magic items throughout the Forgotten Realms, and it's our job to recover them. And not only have we found out that there's this one very, very powerful weapon that can turn the tide against magic users, we have found that there are other forces involved trying also to find and locate this rumored weapon, and it is our imperative to find it. That is the actual arc. The overall narrative is us finding, recovering Neuraxis before anyone else does.
Yeah, opposed by this mysterious organization that seeks to end all magic, purge it from the material plane, and effectively take the stars to the earth.
Yeah, absolutely. That our forces against us and all throughout Favorite. We even discussed it. I remember having early discussions like, who else would know about this? What other NPCs within the established Forgotten Realms? Is it the Zentara? Is it the Harpers? Is it the uh, was it the Order of the Gauntlet? Are these different factions? The King's Alliance. We have used some of those in our storytelling because we want to kind of ground this in the Forgotten Realms so that everybody had something to start with. And within our guild, we decided eventually to break them up into houses, and that's where General Grom and Spark Ascendant and other, you'll hear as we go on, other names of the chapter masters. They were designed initially to create a sense of immersion for the players, and then we've kind of used it as a storytelling vehicle as well.
Right. That for anyone who's been wondering this whole time why we started by saying we're Spark Ascendant and General Grom, effectively, as you said, it was another way to further this cause and this experiment and to build this sense of community among our players was to then, I mean, everyone loves their Harry Potter houses, so we created our own. So I, in particular, run the cleric and the paladin and the monks chapter within the Vanguard, and well, General Grom kind of says it all in the name right
Right.
there.
Right. I run the guild, the house for the fighters and barbarians and the melee, the infantry, if you will. That's what the house that General Grom is in charge of. And yeah, the from the beginning is merely they are more symbolic, I think, at first, but we are working with ideas. And this is another thing that I do love about what we've done is that as we grow ideas, we see what the players grab onto, and then expand upon them and make them really fun and to in a way to again create more community bonds. And one of the fun things that we did early on was the logos that you see, that we have up on the screen here. I made pins out of them and
Right.
handed them out to people when they hit, fourth level. And you level up. That's another thing we can really get into, but I'd like to quickly go in. Everyone starts at third level. When you
Right.
enter the Vanguard, you join the Vanguard, you want to play in your first session, you always start at third level, no feats, 100 gold, and no magic items. And that immediately presented an interesting challenge of multi-level players at a table and how
I
that
didn't even
changes the
mention that.
game.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that's another challenge.
That was a huge challenge.
And one that we still haven't faced the full breadth or challenge of,
We have
but
the impact, a true impact of what you have a ninth level player and a third level player. It is we're getting there because we have some new players that have joined. I recently ran into it. So uh, early on, we had the idea of initiate trials. Okay, we'll get a whole table of third level, all new players, all new members to the guild, and then that would be their trial, and we could run adventures consistently from there. But as the story evolves, you realize that we are playing in a present time. The timeline is moving in our story, which I think is fantastic.
and inadvertently too, you've kind of touched on a really important point. We're starting at this point of the podcast, and we'll talk through some of these early episodes about these early days. But as we I'd like us to kind of move in and really tell some people, Sean, I'm so excited about this. We keep saying that. I hope it sounds genuine at this point because it's true. I'm bouncing off the walls, but we have had so many cool moments, and all of it, very importantly, started from such a simple place. Every single step in the way, I don't want to make it sound like we've just been, entirely going by seat of our pants, but we've very much been incorporating and trying new things and experimenting new rules, new ways to implement a shop system and how do we handle level ups and all kinds of stuff, all starting from these very basic ideas. And we'll talk about in a later episode, our very first session where we had more DMs than we did players, to now we're again, we have 6 DMs running 6 tables of 6 players each every single time because we hit
Yeah,
capacity every time.
yeah. Even with a wait list, we try to promote as many people to come out and to play as we can. It's 36 because we need more DMs if we're going to go any to expand that anymore. But also, we also encourage a general audience to come out and enjoy the buffet, meet your guild members, meet your DMs. If you want to be a DM and you just want to come check it out, come check it out. There's opportunities for you to enjoy the game and not actually be involved in playing. And I think that's really uh, that makes a big difference to our community, is that having as many people as possible come out.
I mean, even that initial idea, the multi-table gameplay, the coolest thing is our very last session, we finally did it. Like
Yeah,
almost a year in, minus 1 month, right before our 1 year anniversary, our producer Ryan and myself did a multi-table session where we had 12 players at 2 tables, walked into the bar, sat down at their tables, which were coincidentally next to each other, not realizing that they were actually going to play in the exact same session together. They started playing in 2 entirely different sessions, excuse me, with 2 entirely different DMs, and then within the first 5 minutes, I got to see the looks on all their face. They realized, wait, why is Nathan DMing for my table? Why is Ryan DMing for my? Oh, and they had that
right.
moment of excitement, which, oh my god, was so cool to watch.
Oh yeah, it was amazing, and the response we got from the players that I've heard, the feedback I've heard, it was a unique experience. It was really fun. But there's glimpses as we go through this. Is over the course of the year, there are moments and glimpses in which we are testing the water, so to speak, of what multi-table or multi-story interactivity could be like, and where you started a presentation to the entire guild and had everybody in the room watching one thing happen. And that's like you start to see those tastes happen, and watching one player have something happen the month before come into my table and literally feel the consequences of what happened the month previous. Like actually see it come into action. Their reactions are amazing. It changes the way you DM a bit. It makes it more fun. I think you get really excited as a story writer and someone who loves to create these games. There's nothing like it. It is really fun.
There's been this, actually there's been a couple different kinds of escalation throughout this entire project too, because also I started running predominantly theater of the mind just because it's easier to set up. I have like little pawns, like the like game piece pawns, as well as some Pathfinder cardboard pawns that I'd use. I didn't do minis. But then I got you and I got Ryan coming in with our, now we have a guy who 3D prints just to
Yes.
volunteer for us and just to support because he loves what we do so much. Coming in with giant terrain. Like actually, I think he 3D printed his own house at this point. So
Yeah.
now there's become this DM arm race to one up each other in terms of the quality of game they're bringing to their table.
Yeah, that is one of the things I've noticed that I really enjoy, is that we are the DMs are in a bit of a competition with each other to who can make the coolest table. What can you do? How do you make it interactive? I love puzzles. I love things on my table that react to what they do, and I can move, and I love that stuff. I love the immersion of it. I love the minis, but I also I do like theater of the mind because you can set up. I like a combination of both. I'll say it that way. Is that I love the idea of them visually seeing what the environment in front of them. It allows me to now talk more about the mood and more about their senses that they don't see. Like visually, I got these things. I know where they are. Well, in that there's a mist, or there's this, or the 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 sound, the smell. Smell is a fun one as an environmental texture. I love describing how things smell because everybody can relate to it almost immediately.
And it really can't be understated too with all of this, with the escalation, with every single little bit of this. There's also the fundamental thing which we stated right at the beginning, which is we are writing a new one shot. Each of us is writing their own new one shot literally every single month. Brand new adventure, brand new story, again, unable to predict what players are going to be at your table, what their class will be, what their level will be, and also players are going to do what players are going to do. So unable to also predict how the players will interact in that story. Like, we have a certain degree of, right, you're coming for a singular adventure. If I start you at the opening to the dungeon and it's clear that this is the opening to the dungeon, please don't walk in the opposite direction, right? We have that very basic level. But aside from that, still having to create that new story as just a challenge of creativity.
Mhm.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that's so much fun, and the challenge to that creativity, I think, is great. And to get back a little bit into our DM's arms race, it is a friendly competition. There's
Right, of
two things
course.
about there's two. One of the most enjoyable things for me, and in the process of doing this over the course of time, is the friendships that we've made. Much like Brian and I met for the first time and became instant friends, Nathan and I met for the first time, and then Ryan and I met for the first. Not this was not like a bunch of people who had figured this all out and like, hey, we've been playing D&D together for 10 years. Why don't we try this? These are literally five. Right now, we have six people that we've met on the way, and I think one is a tribute to how this game is inclusive, how this game speaks out to everybody, that anybody can play it. It's the availability, which is also why I like the fact that we're free, that we offer
Of
free
course, yeah.
D&D. It's because it's I don't want any barriers to that people to have for not, oh, no, it's too expensive, I don't want to play, or I can't be creative enough. Our players and the environment that we've created, everyone is creative and supportively creative. They want you to help you with your backstory. Do you want some information from my character? How do we tie our characters together? And if couples that have come play, they like to tie their characters together so they have, and then they'll play at different tables, and then they get back together and can talk about it as a couple, and it just adds to their, I think, to their relationship and what makes it fun for us.
Which, by the way, at this point, we've mentioned a couple times throughout this talk we've been having that we've got players writing dispatches and writing missives, and where we've been doing epilogues for some of the stories. All of these, all of the character descriptions, all of the session recaps, all of the actually DM session recaps and the player session recaps, or the missives, the memos, all of the guild chapter master announcements. It's to the point where when our webmaster Ryan and producer Ryan entered the chat, we actually now have a wiki, vanguardguild.fandom.com. You can go there, please. I'll say that one more time for the listeners. It's vanguardguild.fandom.com, where you can read through all of this, see where we currently are on the campaign. We actually encourage a lot of our players to submit art of their characters if they have them and would like to do so. I, honestly, that was an even cooler moment for me, was just starting to see how that built. I'm like, what are we doing here?
Right. The players started to like, they have their own page within our fandom page that they can effectively populate for their characters' information, which is fantastic for DMs because what do? We look at this stuff, we read it, and we can pull nuggets from those backstories to tie into our adventures in ways that now again is another level of immersion, another level of connection that we have as storytellers and DMs from the Vanguard to our players. And that's second to none. The friendships that we've made, that I've made so far with all my players and all the people that have been at my table, but that and you, Ryan, Brian, Rich, Jeremy, everybody, Mike, everybody who's been a part of what we're doing, I think is what I get out of it more than
I,
anything, is our friendships and our connections that we've made.
it has been genuinely so cool. 'Cause I ran a club in college, also for nerds, and one of my favorite parts of that was seeing the community there grow, and not just because I met new people and I got to make new friends, but it was watching some of the friendships and the connections that built between the people in my organization, and I'm seeing that all again here in such a cool way. Like, we're seeing players who are meeting here for the game for the first time and then becoming friends afterwards. We're seeing people engage, well, not, I don't just want to say the Discord, because I mean they're engaging outside of Vanguard stuff, but also continuing to engage on the Facebook and the Discord. I bumped into some of our players at PAX sitting 2 seats away from me, and we didn't even notice it until we were like, oh my God. Having just those basic connections. we've even have I hope I don't embarrass the person, but one of our players, they go by the character name Min. I believe they're just a freshman in high school. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think that's one of our younger players. We do have an age limit because we are in a tavern. At 13, you would have to have a chaperone, and which is fun because both her parents have our characters within our story.
Right. I watched the day. I remember they played at my table for the very first time for their very first session,
Mhm.
and came in like clutching the box of dice. I think I know at least at one point a die hit the floor too. So it kind of had that like, that moment of the shy kid comes in like very very clutched, very very possessed of their stuff, but very clearly wanting to play, and getting to watch them. That was, I think, 6 7 months ago,
Yeah,
and
at least.
it's been a slow process, but surrounded by the way adults, people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, all playing D&D, and this very smaller personality. I have definitely, if men, if you're listening to the podcast, I don't know if you've noticed it, but I have definitely watched them come out of their shell more and more and more from game to game, and I'm excited every time I see them at my table. It's just been so cool to watch, not just men's stories, but other stories like theirs as well.
Oh, there's plenty of stories throughout this, and then we will get into all of them as we progress through this podcast. Because we find them fascinating. We find them uh, they connect us not only to the game but our memories and our shared experiences. Just make this such a fun opportunity to play a game that we all love and that we really enjoy. And I can't tell you how much fun it is to see the players come back and I have my friends outside of this that I have they all know me as Sean, but everyone within the guild, no one calls me Sean. They all call me General Grom, and they've had since it started. And I don't know how that stuck, but I couldn't be happier.
Well, it's your reputation's growing because we even have a UK fan at this point too in our Discord.
Yeah, yeah, General Grom and Spark Ascendant and Valeria Celestine and Izarina Wellerton. And Skane Shadestrider. Those names you'll hear, we'll bring them up. They are personified by each of our DMs in a very special way, and everyone has been able to grab these characters and grow with them, and you will hear their names. And yeah, General Grom being the loudest voice first. I was pushing that voice and pushing that concept from the beginning, and we haven't really touched on it too much but I did know that from the beginning, Nathan had always said, "I'm just here for one of these. I wasn't planning on coming back. I got one in me." And then one led to two, and two led to three, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Go ahead. Tell him this in every episode. Don't worry.
he's in, and again, that's what I think is so much fun about it is watching all of our connections grow over time,
Mhm.
organically and naturally without being forced, and everybody giving room, especially in our DMs, uh, from our DMs to our players, giving everyone enough room to have as much fun with their characters as they can without feeling they're stepping on somebody or taking up too much attention. There's such a sharing process in this. It's so much fun.
Yeah,
I know
I
I say that a
certainly
lot.
I certainly want to thank, even at this point, I know it feels weird to do a thank you in a first episode, but like the fact that Sean and I, for anyone listening who's not one of our regular players, the fact that Sean and I are here doing this now is just a reflection of the passion, not just that we've had for this game, but that all of our players have had for this game so far, and all the other DMs have, and we've just wanted to share this with as many people as possible. So that's what we have planned moving forward. We've got a lot of ideas for episodes and things we want to talk about. We, of course, want to do some, our own general DMing advice and share some of that. But we know that there's also a lot of DM advice podcasts out there too. But we also want to bring our perspective in running this style of game, which I don't know is the most common or most available thing out there. We
I
want to
definitely
talk
agree.
Yeah, we want to talk about session planning. Oh my goodness, because as I said, if it hasn't been clear from the other times I repeated it, it's a challenge prepping some of these games sometimes. We want to talk about some of the reports of how those sessions went, and also just stuff on community organization. Like I cannot wait to get, even though he's literally in my ears, our producer. I can't wait to get Ryan on board, because when he came in as webmaster, all that he has done to help us get the wiki going, get the Facebook going better, get the Discord going. There's so much of an art to even just what he does, that for anyone who wants to create this kind of experience, be it at a bar or at your job or at your local game store,
Right.
there's so much. There's at least been so much for us that we have learned, that certainly someone can at least take some kind of positivity from this and bring it to their own experiences, and we're just excited to share that.
Yeah, with Ryan, our producer, which you've said a bunch of times tonight, he his involvement, and once he got it, it just upped our level. It changed the way we were organized and how we wanted to be organized, how we communicate to each other, creating avenues for DMs to work out storylines in the most efficient way. Those things changed everything that we did, and we'll talk more about it. And he will be on the show. Uh, he absolutely has to. We can only say his name so many times and not show him.
Yeah, we've very much been figuring out things as we go along, but at this point we're ready to start sharing some of our findings. In fact, actually, I'll give one more peek behind the curtain. We're so much been figuring, without again making it sound like we're just bumbling through, but we've so much been figuring things out and actively, like, passionately trying to do it in the best we can, and bring our best foot forward for our players, and hopefully our fans of this podcast as it goes on. That this is actually the third time we've recorded this episode.
Yeah, we
We
needed to
did
get
a
it right.
Yeah, we did a trial run at your house, which I think we both knew that was going to be the rough cut. That was the give it a shot. We gave a second run, got some feedback. It came out way better than the first. We thought,
Yeah,
okay, cool, this is good. And then we started recording the next few episodes, and we even noticed that as we got more comfortable with the process, some of the basics of podcast recording, we found that, oh, we can do episode one way better. So we decided we've got to do that again too.
yeah. I hope that we did. I think we pulled it off. It is. We wanted this to be we still do. We want this to be the best we can. We are a bit perfectionist. What DM isn't a perfectionist? Uh, we don't
My
want to
precious.
get, yeah, my precious. This is our baby. We kind of started with this and grew it together, and we want it to be the best. So yes, I agree. I'm perfectly. Yeah, this is not the first time we tried episode one, and I'm hoping you enjoy it. I know I am.
So yeah, well, with that, before we close, I think we should at least give people a teaser of what's to come. So from the first episode, we'll move on to the next episode. Will be about our first session.
Yeah.
Sean and me running our first. We had the idea pitched. We knew the kind of campaign thing it was going to be. I was still, I think, a contractor DM at this point because I wasn't
Yeah.
committed.
Right. That's safe. Yeah.
But how we planned and ran those first initial sessions of the Vanguard. So, well, at this point, I'd like to take this moment. Sean, I'm sure you're feeling the same way.
Yeah.
I hope you guys all enjoyed listening to this episode of the Vanguard Chronicles. Promise it will not be the last, and promise it won't even be the best one, because we have so much more, and we're continuing to grow and learn through this process. But please, if you have the time, take a moment, like, comment, subscribe, do all the niceties, and absolutely go and read everything that's been going on at the Vanguard at vanguardguild.fandom.com. Sean and I would both super appreciate it. I'm sure our players would love to share some of the content and the ideas they've created. And yeah, Sean, you got anything else for the people?
Just to reiterate what you said, I'm super excited about doing this and sharing our process to create this. And within that, you will find, hopefully, it'll help other DMs in the challenges that they face in prepping and not get burned out. I mean, we're going to talk about all those things too. And to close with it, just thank you for listening and watching. And we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, I've been Nathan, or Spark Ascendant.
And I've been Sean, otherwise known as General Grawl.
And we'll see you on the next one. Thank you all again for listening to the Vanguard Chronicles podcast. If you want to read more about our adventures, don't forget to check out our wiki at vanguardguild.fandom.com. If you want to support our charity with Extra Life, go to their website and search for the Vanguard. And of course, if you want to support us, you already know the drill. Please like, please subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.